This happened when my now husband and I were moving from the east to the west coast. I was 21 at the time. This was our second time making this trip, and this one was just to pick up a few last things and grab our 2 dogs. At this point, we were trying to make good time since we were tired of being on the road and would only stop for food and restroom breaks. So, we weren't strangers to rest stops at odd hours of the day. I can't remember what state this happened in because we do a lot of traveling and rest. Stops have all blurred together over the years. Anyway, my husband had been driving for a while, and it was time to switch off, walk the dogs, and stretch our legs. So, we pulled into a rest stop around 3 or 4 a.m. There was only one other vehicle in the lot, most likely with someone sleeping inside of it, and not that many truckers in the truck area, so the rest area was fairly empty. I jumped out of the car and let my husband know I was going to run into the restroom before I let the dogs out. While I ran in, he was going to hang out by the car to have a smoke and keep an eye on our dogs. However, we parked our car by the dog area, and to get to the restrooms, you had to walk over this hill, and you couldn't see the restrooms from our car. Being late at night, my husband decided to walk most of the way with me to make sure I got there okay. I wasn't worried, but didn't mind the extra comfort of having him there. I finished up in the restroom, came out to walk the dogs, and let my husband take his restroom break. Even though it was late and I felt a bit cut off from the lighted area of the rest stop, I wasn't worried. I'm small and don't weigh much, but my dogs are German Shepherd mixes and very protective of me. Plus, I was taught self-defense at a young age and feel capable of defending myself if the time came. I'm walking my dogs and let them do their business. I noticed that one of the semi-trucks that had been sitting on the far side of the stop started up and slowly started driving in my direction. Now, this didn't seem worrisome to me because they were on the trucker's side, and I assumed they were heading to the exit to get back onto the highway. So, I grabbed 2 doggy bags, cleaned up after my dogs, and started heading to the trash can. As I'm walking, I'm suddenly blinded by bright headlights. I look in the direction of the lights and see that the semi that I thought was leaving pulled up as close to the truck lot and car lot divide as possible, and now had their brights aimed directly at me. Pissed off that someone was blinding me with their brights, I quickly tossed the poop bags away and started walking back to my car. As I'm walking away, the dude starts flashing his lights over and over again. I'm almost to my car, and I'm just wondering if I'm missing something and becoming more and more irritated. He starts creeping his truck in my direction again while flashing his lights. My dog sensed my irritation, and they immediately went on alert and stared in the trucker's direction. I finally made my way by my car, and the guy was still flashing his lights while stopping his truck in my direction again. I don't scared easily, so I decide to stand there and glare in his direction. Then he finally stops flashing his lights. Good, I assume he's done, and started getting my keys out to unlock the car. Suddenly, my dogs stiffened beside me. Their hackles raised, and they began to growl. I hear the sound of a door opening and turn back in the trucker's direction. I see his door is now open, and I see a foot starting to exit the truck. I'm sitting there thinking this guy is a complete idiot when my husband shows up and wraps his arm around me while flipping the trucker off. The trucker's foot disappears back into his truck. He shuts his door and leaves the rest stop pretty fast. I told my husband about him flashing his lights, and he explained to me the truckers use this method to flag women down at rest stops for sex. I was grossed out. I'm guessing he thought I was alone because of how the rest stop was set up. However, I was in no way dressed like someone interested in random sex at a rest stop. I was wearing layers because it was cold and I was driving a newer car. Plus, what idiot thinks it's a good idea to try to approach someone with two huge dogs. Although I was never scared during the whole thing, I do think the whole situation was creepy because the guy was not quite there and was acting pretty abrasive. Back in 2013, I had just started my education, and after the first school period, I had to find an internship to progress. However, it proved almost impossible at the time. So, while I was looking, I decided to take another job to ensure we had food on the table. After searching for a while, I found out that a friend of my fiancé's family owned a handicapped bus company, a sort of taxi service for wheelchair users or otherwise disabled people. He needed someone to cover the night shift for a bus that had to be on call at least 22 hours a day. Being a night owl, I immediately told him I'd be happy to take the job. After obtaining the required license, I was hired. The job was pretty basic: pick up people and drop them off where they needed to go. Sometimes I had to use a machine to get wheelchairs up or down some stairs. When there were no trips, I drove to a designated area and did whatever while waiting. I quickly found a truck stop in the area where I could park and catch some sleep. There was a gas station where I could buy coffee in the early hours of the shift. On the other side of the gas station's parking lot, there was a rundown restaurant with a motel connected to it. To avoid disturbing the sleeping truckers, I parked on the restaurant side. After parking there every night for a while, I noticed one particular room had a lot of people come and go. In the beginning, I thought nothing of it. Then, one night, towards the end of the summer, while I was half asleep with the window slightly open, I suddenly heard yelling coming from the motel. Some dude came tumbling out of the room and started running. A few seconds later, a big guy came running after him with something in his hand. I thought it was none of my business and went back to my half-sleeping waiting stage. Not much time passed, and my phone went off. I had a trip hours away. So, I turned on the bus and was leaving the parking lot when I saw the big guy coming around the corner. The rest of the night, I had back-to-back trips, so I didn't park until I got home. The day after, I didn't get a return to home zone until 2 or 3 a.m. When I arrived at the parking lot, the area where I used to park had fist-sized rocks strewn all over the place. Not connecting the dots at the time, I just parked a few spots over and started waiting. I fell asleep pretty fast, but was jerked back into reality when a car right in front of my bus honked its horn, flashed the high beams, and revved its engine. I thought it was just some idiot who noticed me sleeping and found it funny, trying to make me annoyed. So, I jumped out of the bus, about to tell him to back off, but instead of driving off or stopping, the driver made gestures indicating I should back off. Then, I connected the dots. Not wanting to seem like a pushover, I stood still and stared at the car. After what seemed like a long time, but must not have been more than 30 seconds, the car drove off. I decided to park near the trucks from then on. A month passed, and nothing had happened since the car episode. I figured that nothing more would if I just kept parking by the trucks. Then, one night, I had a long 12-hour shift on Sunday. I didn't have time to eat dinner before work that day. During the first half of my shift, I had back-to-back trips with no time to eat. So, when I got a return to home zone, I quickly parked at the far end of the almost empty truck stop and got ready to eat my now very late dinner that my fiancée packed for me. A few months ago, I was driving back to school to visit my parents. It's about a 2-hour drive, so I usually keep myself entertained with music. I'm a 5'3", 21-year-old female driving my dad's little old pickup truck alone in the leftmost lane of a 3-lane highway. Dorking around to the music on the radio, suddenly I notice a semi-truck going the same speed as me in the rightmost lane. Embarrassed for getting caught in dork mode, I stopped singing, tried to speed up so he couldn't see me anymore. He matched my speed, which ticked me off a little bit. So, I looked at the driver, expecting to see some angry person. To my surprise, he was smiling and waving. Thrown off, I kind of chuckled and waved back. Big mistake. He moves over to the middle lane to be closer to me, and now he won't stop smiling and waving. At first, I played nice, waving back a little because a semi-truck beats a tiny pickup truck any day. But I was mostly focusing on getting out of this guy's field of vision safely. I tried speeding up as fast as my truck would allow and slowing down as suddenly as I could without endangering anyone behind me. But he would just match my speed no matter what. If someone was coming up in his lane, he'd move to the right at the last possible second and pass them before I could slow down and get behind them. He had a lot more practice with reckless maneuvering than I do, so he had me trapped and he was using other cars to help him. The whole time, he's smiling, waving, holding up the #1 sign for some reason I still don't know, and rapidly losing any charm he once had. As this continued for about 5 miles, I got worried and called 911. I gave them a description of the truck, a white cargo truck with a black cab and a Pennsylvania company logo on it. The driver was a balding, middle-aged tan guy with a dirty blue t-shirt on. They advised me to pull off to the emergency shoulder on the left, but I've never done that, and it looked too narrow, so I didn't feel comfortable. At this point, he was passing someone else in the middle lane, and I finally had a chance to slow down and merge 2 lanes over to the rightmost lane. I started speeding past him, so he couldn't trap me again, and the operator told me to take the closest service plaza about 5 miles away. She said he probably wouldn't follow me, so I could stop there for a few minutes before getting back on the highway. She told me to call if he did follow me, but again, he probably wouldn't. So she hung up. Now, he's still holding up the #1 sign and smiling this creepy, increasingly perverted grin at me while I avoid eye contact. The service plaza is a 1/4 mile away, and I was not using any turn signals. But I guess he knew what I was doing because he braked hard and merged behind me right at the last second to join me in exiting the service plaza. After I got my heart to start back up from the coronary, it just experienced, I called 911 again. Now, the way this service plaza was set up was that semi-trucks had to use a separate lane winding to the right of the plaza that led to a parking lot behind the plaza, just for big trucks. The rest of us used a smaller lane to park immediately in front of the plaza. I parked, and as I was explaining to the new operator what was going on, I watched the semi creep around its path while the driver stared me down, smiling. I freaked. He knew where I had parked. He knew where to find me. If I just stayed there, I thought maybe I could have floored it to get back on the highway, but I was afraid he would see me and follow me again. So, I drove to a gas station to the left of the plaza, which has a view of the semi-truck parking lot, hoping he wouldn't find me until the police came. The operator transferred me to the woman who was helping me before. She informed me that they dispatched a couple of police cars, but couldn't tell me how long they would be. I see the trucker has gotten out of his truck and is heading towards me, even though my windows are closed and my doors are locked. I'm panicking on the phone to the operator. She tells me the police should be there soon, and I should be safe there, so I should sit tight while keeping her updated. I wanted to at least drive back to the parking lot I was in before, but it's a one-way entrance to the gas station, so I couldn't. I glared at the trucker and showed him my phone when he came close. He finally stopped smiling and made it look like he was going into the service plaza. I looked in my right side view mirror and found him hiding behind a big white pillar in front of the plaza, staring at me again. I freaked out and asked the operator where the cops were and if I could leave because he was being ultra creepy. She tells me to sit tight again because they should be there any minute. So, I do. Then he comes out of hiding and starts walking towards my truck. I put it in drive just in case and tell the operator what he's doing. I refuse to make eye contact with him, but I keep watching my mirrors to make sure I know where he is. His smile is back, and he walks around my truck, looking at it as if looking for a way to get in. I couldn't take it anymore. I waited until he circled back behind me, floored it, and told the operator I was not waiting one. More second for the police. She apologized and told me the police would look for the man and talk to him if they found him. I should focus on getting home safely while keeping an eye out for him. I don't know if they did that or not, but I know none of that would have happened if I had my boyfriend with me. So not only can I walk alone, but I also can't drive alone as a female. Nice to know, but creepy trucker dude who can't take a hint. Let's not meet.